for ordinary workers in this country. The prices of €475,000 for 3-bedroom houses are absolutely out of the reach of the vast majority of ordinary workers. And even if you include the various subsidies that and discounts on market price, they are still way in excess of what ordinary workers could possibly afford. When you add in all the various subsidies, you're still talking about 3-bedroom houses that are €399,000, requiring people to have an income, households to have an income of in the region of €100,000. This is just insanity, and it is evidence of precisely what people before profit and others have been saying for years. I mean, people will have heard the government people will have heard the government taunt people before profit and the opposition about why we opposed certain schemes for the development of public land, or why we opposed the LDA. Well, what we've seen with Oscar Traynor is the absolute vindication of the reasons why we opposed the sale of public lands to private developers to supposedly deliver affordable housing. Because we knew that if the affordable housing scheme was based on what private developers were capable or willing to deliver, it would not be affordable, because it includes their profits in the equation. And that is what we've seen in a dramatic way in Oscar Traynor. But this is not just limited. The government's dancing to the tune of private developers and the market are going to have an impact on so-called affordable housing delivery all over the country. So we see today the announcement that the Taoiseach has signed a waiver on the social and affordable housing requirement for the Ainger Street site of TUD. Absolutely unbelievable. A prime site in the centre of Dublin, where there should be a requirement to deliver at least as a minimum 10% social and 10% affordable. In fact, in our view, it should be 100% social and affordable on a site that was in public ownership, and they're going to waive the requirement for social and affordable housing altogether. And that's been done from the very top by the Taoiseach. And again, it's because of market concerns. In all these cases, the common thread is the market is dictating, and that affordability is defined as some sort of discount on the market, or we can't even deliver affordability or social housing of any description because the market says we can't. And this is also going to have, in our view, implications, something we've been saying for years since the LDA was conceived, for the LDA's affordable housing when they finally start to deliver it. And the first site where that's going to happen is Shangana in my constituency, where we still have no idea what the price is. But we have said all along that we believed that, given that the LDA legislation required the benchmark to be against the market, that what we would actually get would be housing that would be completely unaffordable. We still have no idea on this publicly owned site what the prices are going to be, but when you look at Oscar Traynor and you look at what the market prices are in places like Dunleary Rathdown, it is almost certainly going to be way out of the reach of ordinary workers. Similarly, in Cherrywood, the biggest residential development in the entire country, a new town, effectively a mini city that is being built, at least €15 million of public money went in the form of LEHAF funding, infrastructural sort of funding support for that strategic development. We still have no idea how much affordable housing we're getting or how much it will cost. We've been asking for literally years. And people will know that site is well underway now. Houses and apartments are being delivered. We still have no idea what affordable housing we're getting for the huge public investment that went in, or whether it will actually be in any way remotely affordable. But when you look at the market prices that are being charged for the newly delivered housing in Cherrywood, they are in the region of €600,000 and €700,000. So even if there's a small discount on the market, we are going to be talking about affordable housing that is actually only affordable to millionaires. It's absolutely outrageous. So the government have to be called on this. The affordable scheme is an absolute disastrous failure because they continue to dance to the tune of the market and private developers, and we need a radical break from this policy to develop public land for public and affordable housing where it can be delivered at affordable levels, but that is not something property developers or the market are capable of delivering.
Just two issues briefly. One is the absolute scandal that will outrage people that the bin companies are saying that they're going to need to increase the price of people's green bin collection as a result of people doing exactly as they're asked to do. People doing the right thing, bringing their plastic bottles back to the deposit and return schemes at the shops. Now the bin companies are saying we're losing money as a consequence of this, and therefore we need to put up the prices. It shows the absolute madness of having bin collection in private hands run on a for-profit basis, where the more people behave in the correct way, whereby they recycle, so using their black bin less, where they're composting, using their black bin less, then they say we have to increase the price of the black bin. Now we have a situation where people are using their green bins less as a result of bringing back their bottles to the shops, and they're faced with the price of green bins going up. The waste companies are enormously profitable. There should be no price increase. But fundamentally, and this is a thing we're pushing on the councils where we've been elected to across the country, we need the remunicipalisation of bin services. They need to go back into council control and ownership, and we need an end to bin charges. They point in the opposite direction in terms of what we need in terms of increasing levels of recycling, composting and so on. Second issue quickly is there are 4 projects for discussion and decision this week in the Dáil to do with Ireland's participation in a European project of militarisation. These things don't get much headlines, they don't get a lot of coverage, but there's 2 projects of new projects of the European Defence Agency that the Irish government wants Ireland to sign up to, and there's 2 projects of PESCO that the Irish government wants Ireland to sign up to. There is a context to this, which is a massive increase in military spending all across Europe. People may have heard Jennifer Carroll McNeil on the radio this morning speaking about how, no, don't worry, we're not being pressured by Europe to increase our military spending. In fact, we're doing it all by ourselves. We want to increase it by ourselves. She positively cited the example of Denmark, which has given up a public holiday, a long-standing public holiday, so they can spend more on the military. And then she referenced Ireland with, well, we increased our public holidays, and I suppose fair enough, but. And so in reality, what she's saying is she would like to reduce the number of public holidays that we have so we can spend more. Explicitly, she spoke about spending more on military hardware. These projects always have very technical names, make people think that they're, of no real consequence. I'll give you just one of the ones we're signing up to and we'll be opposing and voting against. It's a PESCO project called the Network of Logistic Hubs in Europe and Support for Operations. And the project is with respect to possible operations for the pre-deployment of material, that's war material, depots and or maintenance facilities of other European countries could be used mutually as well. The network will decrease the reaction time and increase capacities and sustainability for military operations. This is a project that is coordinated by Germany, which is the second biggest supplier of weapons to Israel in the entire world after only the US. And so these are the sort of militarisation projects that the Irish government are signing us up to. We are opposed to this direction. We think the vast majority of the public are opposed to it, and we think the public should get the mechanism to decide in terms of the question of neutrality in a referendum and in terms of at a general election, as opposed to the government, like every couple of months, coming forward with new military projects that the Irish government wants us to sign up to.
Can I just ask you about something totally different? There's a warning today that Ireland's temperature in our lifetime, we might see 33 degrees Celsius. Are the government doing enough with regard to climate change?
No. The government talks a lot about a commitment to climate change. The government has a climate action law which supposedly has binding targets of reductions of 51% by 2030. But the truth is we're going to miss those climate targets by an absolute country mile. And the reason for that is, despite the presence of the Green Party in government, which gives a kind of green coloration and gives rhetoric to the government is entirely playing to the tune of big agribusiness, which is the number one emitting sector in this country, to the likes of Ryanair, the biggest emitting corporation in this country. They refuse to actually take action that would meaningfully curb emissions. So they refuse to say we need to have a fundamental change in terms of our agriculture model, improving this quality of life of small farmers and their families who struggle under the current model. They refuse to say we should have free, green, frequent public transport to get people out of cars. They refuse to roll out the retrofitting, the installation at anywhere near the rate that needs to happen. I mean, councils across the country are crying out for funding from the government to retrofit social housing, for example. These are all measures that would make people's lives better, that would give people warmer homes, that would reduce their bills and reduce carbon emissions. And the government is extremely, extremely slow in terms of doing it. So I think it's a real problem. And in a way, it's like the new climate denialism is to say, oh, we acknowledge the science, but kind of don't worry, we're on top of it. They're not on top of it. The world is heading towards disaster. And unfortunately, all the indications is that if the local election results were repeated, the next general election would probably be a government which looks very similar to this one, but with the Greens replaced by a bunch of right-wing independents who are almost climate denialists themselves. So things may get even worse unless we have a radical change.
Paul, on the military spending, there was a report in Bloomberg yesterday that two Russian subs have been in Irish waters since 2022. Is there not a concern that we haven't got the equipment to monitor our own seas, and that's why we need to increase the spending on military equipment?
Well, firstly, I think it's very, very important because there's an elision between two different things takes place when we're talking about Russian subs or warcraft or whatever, navy being in our waters. These are presumably not in our actual territorial waters. These are in the EEZ, which British ships are often in them, US ships are often in them. So I think that any time you have a Russian ship, it's major news to say this is a major thing, there's a threat to our sovereignty and so on. We're against all of these crafts, to be clear. We're against the Russians, we're against the US being present, we're against the British being present. I would say when it comes to military spending, right, and again you wouldn't know this, but the combined NATO spending on military is 17 times that spent by Russia. So how much more is it that the Western powers want us to spend in order to be safe? This isn't a race that is winnable by ordinary people. How much is a small country like Ireland meant to spend on military hardware? It simply is not possible for Ireland to compete with the US or China or Russia or whoever else. So I think we should reject the kind of scaremongering, the warmongering that is going on, and instead argue that Ireland should be a voice for peace on the world stage and should consistently oppose all imperialism, all oppression, so opposing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, opposing the agenda of US imperialism, including in Europe, opposing Israel's horrendous genocide against the Palestinians supported by the US, so being a consistent voice for peace, as opposed to, I think the Irish government really would like, and Micheál Martin in particular, wants Ireland to be part of a Western US-led camp that is currently supporting horrific war crimes in Palestine.
Paul, just a very quick response to the government's plan to add a number of countries to the safe countries list in terms of migration.
Yeah, I think this is more like performative cruelty by the government. It's more looking to be hard on the issue of migration, that simply will reduce it'll make it harder for people who are seeking asylum to be able to access that asylum. It will not build a single extra home for an Irish person. It will not provide a single extra hospital bed for an Irish person. It will not deal with the cost of living crisis for an Irish person. So I think what we're seeing in Ireland is a slightly muted version compared to what we've seen in France, for example, with the Macron government, but of playing the migration card, of presenting themselves as being hard on migration and presenting migration as being the problem that is causing ordinary people's problems from wherever they've come from. Whereas it's very, very important, I think it's important that the opposition comes together to say this, is that the cause of all of these problems that affect ordinary people is not migration. it is the fault of the government and the economic system that they defend, which puts profit of the very, very rich few ahead of the needs of the vast majority. So I think it's important to defend the right to asylum, to oppose the EU Migration Pact, and to oppose those who would seek to centre the issue of migration as being the problem. Because I think we saw in the first round of the French elections exactly where this leads. And in a few years' time, the government or the media shouldn't be able to say, oh, we don't know how this came about. If governments, supposedly centre kind of right governments, play the card of pretending that the main problem facing people is migration, well then they shouldn't be surprised when people go and vote for people who are even harder in that direction. I think that's a part of what has happened in France and across Europe.
Well, I might just, or Richard, I suppose I might ask about the Dublin City Transport Plan. The sort of reported today that Richard Shakespeare is looking at potentially delaying the plan based off concerns from a lobby group of businesses and based on the meeting that took place between Emer Higgins earlier this week.
To be honest, I'm not up to speed to it. To be honest, I couldn't give you a useful comment on it.
Right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah.